Hey, it's Missy
and April,
and this is SheelaNaGig. Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. We're so excited. Keep the questions coming. Keep the conversation coming. It's just great to have you with us today. How are you, April? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think you know what we do on this podcast, right? I'm just going to review real quickly because each week we explore our own SheelaNaGig. To us, that's a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, somebody who empowers us, inspires us. It could be somebody that you've heard of that we just want to give a little bit more light to, or
somebody you've never heard of.
Yeah, I always say like a crime podcast, we're never going to run out of content. Sadly, I guess, and you know, good for us. But you know, there's a lot of women out there who just need some light and either never got it or just need a lot more. So here we are today. But you're good. You're good.
I'm good.
Okay, so we have a very exciting episode.
We do.
I always love when we have a special guest, and we do have a special guest too. So I'm super excited to introduce Ms. Pamela Toler, armed with a PhD in history, a well-thumbed deck of library cards, I love that, and a large bump of curiosity. Author, speaker, and historian Pamela D. Toler translates history for a popular audience. She goes beyond the familiar boundaries of American history to tell stories from other parts of the world, as well as history from the other side of the battlefield, the gender line, which I think is totally fascinating. I'm very excited. Yes. Or the color bar as well. Toler is the author of 10 books of popular history, from children and adult books, including Heroines of Mercy Street, Real Nurses of the Civil War, Woman Warriors, An Unexpected History, and The Dragon from Chicago, The Untold Story of an American Reporter in Nazi Germany, which came out in August of 2024. Her work has appeared in American Scholar, Aramco World, Calliope, History Channel Magazine, MHQ, the Quarterly Journal of Military History, Ms. Time.com, and the Washington Post, and has been featured in National Geographic.
And Pamela, we're so excited.
Oh my gosh, welcome, Pamela. Yes, we're so excited. This is a very exciting episode for us.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about you. Where are you coming to us from today, Pamela?
I'm coming from Chicago with 17 inches of snow on the ground. Chilly. Good day to be in and talk about tough broads that are underreported in history.
Broads, for sure. And I'm from Michigan, and she's from New York. So we are all tough broads when it comes to bad weather, right? They're wimps out here in California where we now live. But
absolutely. It's 70 degrees and I'm in a sweater.
Yeah.
But more importantly, going back to the theme of tough women, you have a Sheela for us today, don't you?
I do. Her name is Sigrid Schultz.
Yes, tell us about her.
She was the Berlin bureau chief for the Chicago Tribune from 1925 to 1941. So if you look at those dates, you realize it was the rise of the Nazis.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
For the last couple of years of that period, she also was an early broadcast journalist. She broadcast live every Sunday night from Berlin to the United States, a 15-minute segment of news and analysis. You know, she was one of the first reporters to warn American audiences of just how dangerous the Nazis were. She was one of the last to get out before it was too late.
Wow.
I just got a chill as you said that. Wow.
That's pretty scary. I mean, it's brave work, very brave work.
She was courageous. She was just enormously courageous. The whole time I was working on it, I kept thinking, I wonder if I'd be as brave as she was.
Yeah.
Because she really stood up to the Nazis all the time. And, you know, she had real advantages over other American reporters in reporting on Nazi Germany, just because of luck of the draw. Yep. William Shirer, you may recognize his name. He wrote The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. He was also a reporter, though for a shorter time than she was, and this is what he had to say about her. No other American correspondent in Berlin knew so much of what was going on behind the scenes as did Sigrid Schultz. She just brought an unusual set of skills to the table. And it really is a function of her history.
Sure.
She was born in the United States, 1893. Her parents were immigrants who had come to Chicago and thought they were going to make a living there. But even though for the rest of her life she would describe herself as being an American, and specifically an American from Chicago, she actually lived most of her life in Europe. Her parents moved back to Europe, even after they'd become citizens. They moved back to Europe when Sigrid was 8. And it was because he was a portrait painter. The market for portraits died up in the 1893 economic distresses at the time. And he got a great commission to paint the portrait of a couple of minor German kings. So they went back to Europe. They thought they'd come back in only 2 years. In point of fact, Sigrid was 40 years before Sigrid lived in the United States again.
Wow.
So she grew up in Europe. She went to European schools in both France and in Germany. She went to Norway in the summers to visit her father's relatives. So by 1911, when she graduated from a select girls' academy in Paris, she already was fluent in 5 languages, or 4 languages. She was competent in a 5th. She could kind of fake her way through some others. And that was a skill that most American reporters didn't have.
I'll bet.
And also because she grew up in Europe, she had this sense of European culture that, again, the Americans who were coming to Europe after the First World War just didn't have. The other thing that happened is 1914, right before the war, she follows her parents to Berlin. Her father's opened a new studio. He's painting all of the important people, and they get trapped in Berlin. Both her parents get too ill to travel, so they're stuck there as enemy aliens. And during that time, during World War I, she builds connections across German society. And she knows regular people, the baker who lives down the street. She raised bunnies for food and would trade bunnies for the baker for extra flour. So she knows people like that. But also because her father has these connections to the kind of people who buy portraits, she also knows important businessmen and powerful politicians and senior military leaders and what she describes as nice little white-haired old baronesses who end up being her entree into German society. So when she gets a job at the Chicago Tribune in 1919, she already has the foundation for what's going to be an extraordinary network of sources. Again, nobody else has that.
Between her languages, her understanding of the culture, and her connections, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It did put her in a unique position for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And she also just turned out to have a flair for it. She didn't even know it was a possibility. She actually ran into her first boss at the Tribune at a party. And it was by accident on her part, not entirely an accident. Otherwise, it was a carnival party. It was the first big social event in Berlin after the end of the war. And American reporters had just begun to come into Berlin. American newspapers were setting up for news bureaus there. And the man who was the first Berlin bureau chief was named Dick Little, and he was at that party.
I'm sorry.
I know. It's unfortunate.
I'm so immature. I'm just so immature. It's a little bit of Arrested Development. Let me just.
He was Richard Little, but he's normally called
like Dick Little.
Yeah.
Well, Dick.
And in point of fact, she didn't know it, but she was there as bait because the businessman who was throwing the party, he and a lot of his friends wanted the chance to talk to American reporters.
Sure.
So he sent his younger brother, who was actually someone that Sigrid tutored in languages as a way to earn money during the war. He sent his younger brother to the hotels where the reporters were staying, inviting them to come to this party, and as an incentive, promised that they would meet a young American woman who could tell them what it had been like in Berlin during the war and then during the formation of the Weimar Republic. Only two of the reporters accepted. One was Dick Little, one was his counterpart at the Chicago Daily News. And they get there and they've got a problem because, I mean, Dick Little's a really experienced war correspondent, but he doesn't speak German. Actually, he did claim to have 2 words of German, ein and beer, but that doesn't get very far.
Most important words, certainly.
They're the
right?
most important words, but they're hard to have an interview with someone.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're at this party. They've just met Sigrid, and they turn around, and there's this circle of Europeans who are wanting to talk to them. But they don't speak German. Even the Germans who speak English don't speak it well enough to make the Americans understand them. And once Sigrid realized what the problem was, she basically said, "No problem, I'll translate."
Yeah.
She spent she'd come to that party thinking she was going to dance and eat some wonderful food. It was going to be great. She spent the whole night doing simultaneous translation between German, French, and English between the American reporters and this group of powerful Europeans. It lasted all night. I mean, she literally did it until dawn when they're playing the last song, and she loved it. She thought it was
It must be very
absolutely
empowering for her.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a great time. And a few days later, Dick Little offered her a job as a translator and cub reporter. She didn't even ask him how much it paid. It was a job she hadn't even known existed, and she just said yes. It felt like she'd been training for it her whole life. And in fact, she had been training for it her whole life. So she's there. She's a Girl Friday in many ways. He's teaching her about journalism. He's not just using her as a translator. Several months in, he was transferred to Russia, and then there's a kind of a revolving door of male reporters in and out who are holding that same position. She's providing the same services to them. Finally, in 1925, she's given the job. Now she's the Berlin bureau chief. And, the men who were her colleagues at other papers pretty much agreed that it was a long time overdue.
That's great.
Well, that's encouraging.
We call those support bros.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're remarkably rare.
Yes, they are rare.
True.
But I mean, how could they compete when she's this, a linguist? But they had to recognize that. That's not something you can deny. So they had to see her value in that, I'm sure.
Well, they saw it, but of course it would have been easy to just see it as a nice little support.
Right.
Yeah, support.
job. It's like being able to type. Just
Right.
something
Right.
women. But yeah, she was definitely recognized as being good at it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love when I hear that.
Yes.
And it wasn't as simple as that. Obviously, she put up with all kinds of microaggressions. She put up with all kinds of garbage.
Oh, yeah.
But she worked hard at finding her way into that of being, she was small. She was just barely 5'2". And she's blonde and she's
She was
pretty.
bigger than you, April. April's 4'9".
I'm barely 5'2" myself. So if I'm doing this in front of people, at that point I always say, and if you don't know what that looks like, allow me to demonstrate, and I step away. And
That's great.
But,
That's great. Yes. I know April's a tough one, so obviously she was too.
absolutely.
As are you, Pamela.
Yes, I said Pamela. Yeah, exactly. These small ladies. Amazing.
But it's interesting too, because I could see where she could easily be threatening and resented by the support bros. But I guess she had
And
enough going.
there was some of that. I mean, when Colonel McCormick was the owner of the Chicago Tribune at the time, and when he wanted to move her into that position and move the man who was there to Italy, that man fought bitterly and basically said he really thought that Sigrid should go to Italy because Germany was clearly the center of things. And, and she spoke Italian and that she could do it more cheaply than he could, obviously because she was a woman. And McCormick, bless him, said no, though partially because he thought that it was going to be too dangerous in Italy, as opposed to Germany, which was going to become a very dangerous place.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's 1925. She's the head of the Berlin Bureau. And, from our perspective, the big story is the rise of the Nazis.
Right.
And obviously, it was the big story of her career. In 1925, they're not yet a powerful political group. They're just finding their feet. That changes in 1929 when the American stock market crashes and it takes the German economy with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that crash was a wonderful thing for the Nazi Party.
Mm-hmm.
Their membership went from 109,000 to more than in 1925 to more than 1 million, or 1929, sorry, more than 1 million a couple of years later.
Wow, that's astounding.
Yeah, and it's
I
really
did not know
because
that. That is astounding.
Yeah.
I mean, Germany's economy was already a little dicey. The crash just did it in, and people who had not been feeling like they were succeeding were very willing to follow someone who said he could fix things.
Sounds familiar. I we were just talking about that before this episode, but it does sound familiar, doesn't it, Pamela?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah.
It does sound familiar. It was a little nerve-wracking doing the research. She followed their rise to power every step of the way. She reported stories that nobody else was reporting. She even had a private interview with Hitler in 1931. And that was really rare. Over the course of his career, he maybe gave private interviews to a dozen people.
How did that happen? 1931, you said, correct?
1931. So
And
he's
how did
not
that
yet
happen?
in power. And, in that interview, he told her, I don't need to take Germany by force. I'm winning more power with every election.
Wow.
And she reported that. And she made it clear to her readers that the Nazis intended, once they got in power, to dismantle the Republic and to replace it with a dictatorship, with what they described as truly Germanic men. She was absolutely clear that every election was a battle for the soul of Germany.
Because she came out with that so early and so clear, it's amazing that she was able to stay and continue reporting. How did that work?
Yeah, that's a good
Well,
point.
a couple of things. Number one, in 1931, they are not in power, so they can't do
Right.
anything.
So there was nothing.
So that's part of it. It's also interesting because the Nazis didn't, at least at first, actively censor newspaper writers ahead of time, though they would later be, the censorship on radio was very clear. But they would sort of censor you after the fact, so that if somebody reported that you had published something that didn't fit their idea of what was appropriate, you'd get called in. And it was actually very dangerous. The Nazis came in power in 1933, and almost immediately they put laws in place that curtailed all the rights that the Weimar Republic had, including freedom of the press. And there were new laws in place that made it absolutely clear that if you published something they believed was not in the best interests of the Republic, of the Nazi regime, that it was treason. And they basically warned foreign reporters that if they printed something that the Nazis felt was not appropriate, that they would be threatened with being removed from the country. They handled that carefully because they quickly learned that if you threw someone out, you no longer had any leash on what they said. So, they didn't throw as many people out as you might think. A number of people threw themselves out because they felt it was dangerous. Sigrid stayed until 1941. So she was there during the first years of the war, before Pearl Harbor. She left in the beginning of the year, but it had reached the point where you just could no longer report with any integrity. So she went
And
home.
is that what drove her, as opposed to feeling a threat for her?
She was also feeling unsafe in a way that she hadn't before. That last year that she was there, she just felt that the Nazis were leaning on her all the time, questioning everything. She got called into the Gestapo a lot. The first time she got called in was actually in the summer of 1933, only a few months after they'd come to power. And she got called in pretty regularly, got warned, got slaps on the wrist.
So surely they knew where her allegiance kind of,
Oh,
lied.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they very clearly knew where her allegiance was.
Yeah.
But by 41, it was beginning to feel really dangerous.
That has to feel dangerous when they know, and you're
Yes.
continuing to do what you do. I can
Right. And it was getting harder to get out. It had reached the point that you not only had to have permission to come in, but you also had to have permission to get out. She
Wow.
was one of the last who was able to get out. There was a younger generation of journalists who were still there. And it reached the point that it was pretty clear that they weren't going to let you out unless your replacement was coming in. So they were hoarding hostages in anticipation of America getting into the war. And in fact, only a few days after Germany declared war on the United States, after Pearl Harbor. And it's worth remembering they declared war on us before we declared war on them. But, only a few days after that, they did basically arrest all of the Americans, foreign correspondents and diplomats who were still there, and held them as they interned them. So she got out several months before that while she still
Thank
could.
goodness.
Just to say,
Yeah.
thank God. That's so scary. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What happened on her return? What did she continue to report on?
Well, it's interesting because she thought she was just going to go home for a few months and rest. She had sent her mother back in 1938, and so she was going to spend some time with her mother and see how her mother was doing. She was an only child. So her thought was she'd stay for a few months and then she'd go back and report from neutral countries because she still had lots of connections in the neutral countries. But on her way back, she contracted a really serious disease, which was diagnosed as war typhus. Lots of people died from it, and she was very, very ill for a very long time. And just as she was getting ready to go back, she got hit by a taxi in New York City and messed up her leg. And again, that took a long time to heal.
Wow.
So it was actually February of 1945 when she went back.
Wow.
And at that point, she's a war correspondent. And she was a war correspondent not only for the Chicago Tribune, which makes sense, but also for McCall's magazine.
Oh.
Because what we don't think about, because it doesn't happen today, is a lot of the women's magazines had war correspondents. And the idea was that they would report on the women's stories. Sigrid had those two pieces.
Was she friends with Martha Gellhorn?
Oh, I don't think they were friends.
Oh, interesting. I'm sure they were a little bit competitive too, right?
Well, and they just were, Gellhorn's younger. She's not really from the newspaper background. Their paths cross, all their paths cross.
Yeah.
And Sigrid's a lot older than they are. She's in her 50s when she goes back as a war correspondent, which in war correspondent years is really old in the 40s. And so the intent from the Tribune's perspective was not that she would be reporting day-to-day war coverage, because they already had men in place to do that. What they wanted her to do was to report stories that built on her connections, that built on her understanding of German society. So she's doing behind the scenes coverage, but she also ends up doing some amazing reporting, because when she runs across a story that she's got to tell,
Right.
she tells it.
Mhm.
And some of her best reporting actually was her reports on the camps.
Oh.
And this is one of my favorite stories. So if you'll allow me.
Please
tell
do.
her.
Yes.
She was one of the first reporters to arrive in Buchenwald.
Mm.
The Air Force brought in a handful of senior reporters only a few hours after the Americans liberated the camps.
Okay.
So there'd been no chance to clean anything up. The soldiers were still shaken. I mean, it was just a harrowing experience. But as was so often the case, she had a very different experience there than the other people who were reporting. And one of those was Margaret Burne-Jones, by the way, the photographer. And it was because, again, of her ability at language. She could speak to the liberated prisoners in their own language. And she actually, soon after she had landed in Europe, in Paris, she was given a list of Frenchmen, young Frenchmen, who the Germans had sought out and had arrested deliberately because they were believed to be France's best and brightest. And so she had been looking for information about them as she made her way through Germany with the American army. So she's in the camp. And one way she deals with it is she's trying to find out if anyone has any news about these young men. One of the prisoners hears her speaking to other prisoners in French. And he asks her if she would go to a barracks that was set apart from the others. The men there were dying. And he thought it would be good if they heard someone tell them in French that the camp had been liberated. So she went to the barracks. She later said it was the most gruesome thing she had ever seen, which is quite a statement given that she had just been walking around Buchenwald.
Yeah.
There was 3 tiers of bunks full of dying men. Blood and other fluids were dripping down from the top bunk onto the men below.
Oh, God.
And there was nothing she could do for them. She couldn't even make them more comfortable. All she could do was say over and over again in French, "You're free."
Oh.
And then after a while, she added, "I've just come from Paris. The chestnuts are in bloom in Paris."
Oh,
Wow.
that's beautiful.
And one man sat halfway up and he reached out a hand to her and she went over and took it. And he said, "Is it true?" And she said, "Yes, it's true. You're free. The American planes are coming." And he said, "The chestnuts are in bloom in Paris?"
Oh, it's beautiful.
And she nodded yes. And then he was gone.
Wow.
Oh, and then he was.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, what a story! Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
But at least he died with that beautiful vision of the chestnuts in bloom. Like she gave him such a gift. She gave him a real gift in that moment. Oh, that's so beautiful, but so sad.
I have to ask, and I'm sure Missy is wondering too, how did you find Sigrid Schultz? Where did she come from?
Yes.
I stumbled across her entirely by accident. This interesting news item showed up in my feed one morning. An architectural salvage vendor had gone to an old house in a North Side neighborhood. He found 75 glass plate photographic negatives in the attic because he was there. He'd bid for the right to take anything out that was worth taking. And they were interested because that kind of negative normally was used for really formal pictures. But these were informal pictures of a young woman and a small child and a really big dog. I mean, a really big dog that had been taken in and around the house where he found them. And he just happened to have a girlfriend who was a photographic historian. And the two of them set out to find out who these people were. And it turned out that the young woman, the little girl was named Sigrid Schultz. The woman was her mother, Hedwig. The pictures were taken by her father, Herman, the portrait painter. And then at the end, I hit the punchline, which is, and she grew up to be a groundbreaking foreign correspondent. And I went, what?
What?
And immediately went down the rabbit hole and found the broad outline of her story. And then it was just off to the races.
That's
Yes.
amazing. Love that.
See, it's amazing. I mean, I can imagine it's a very deep rabbit hole.
It is a very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. And tell me, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, are there other writings on here, books, documentaries? What's out there about
Besides
Sigrid?
Pamela's.
Yeah.
She shows up here and there. This is the first book on her. there's a
Congratulations.
woman who's trying to do a documentary. This is the first full-length book on her.
Congratulations.
She
Good
shows
for you.
up. Thank you.
Yes, that's amazing.
If you read Eric Larson's The Garden of the Beasts, she shows up there a few
Okay.
times. She shows up in books about American foreign correspondents or about the Chicago Tribune or about women reporters. She gets a paragraph here, a paragraph there, sometimes 2 or 3 pages. But this is the first full-length book about her.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And
And
so great.
Tell us the origins of the name of the book. What is the name?
Sure.
And how did you get that?
It's actually a wonderful story because the Nazis gave her that name.
I love it.
In 1935, the Nazis were trying to trap American correspondents as spies, hoping that they could get one of them on a big trial, hoping it would allow them to control the others. So one day, Sigrid gets a phone call from her mother, because they share an apartment, that the strange man has dropped off a package. And her mother thinks this is a little strange. Sigrid hurries home. She's sure it's going to be a Nazi trap. Sure enough, she opens it, and it is full of what looked like plans for an airplane engine. And she's sure the Gestapo is going to be there soon. So she tears it up. She tears up the package. She shoves it in the fireplace and waits until it's burned all the way down to ash before she heads back to the office.
Yeah.
Sure enough, on the way back, she runs into a man who she has suspected of being part of this plan to entrap journalists. He's clearly headed toward her apartment. He's accompanied by what she calls 2 shady characters. And she steps right in their path and tells them, don't even bother. There's nothing left to find. I've destroyed everything. A few days later, there was a luncheon at the Foreign Press Club, and Hermann Goering was the guest of honor. He was Hitler's right-hand man, and he was the author behind this bigger plan to entrap foreign journalists.
Yes.
And in front of the entire Foreign Press Corps, she calls him out on the attempt and tells him, none of us are stupid enough to print this stuff. You might as well stop it. And he just lost his temper and said, you're never going to learn to show proper respect to authority. I guess that's one of the characteristics of those people from that crime-ridden city of Chicago. Thereafter, he and his staff always called her that dragon from Chicago.
Oh.
And that's the title of your book?
And that's the title of the book.
Dragon from Chicago. It is a great title. It is a great title. And at least the Nazis gave somebody something, right?
That's right. That's right.
Definitely to be few and far between, right? Oh my gosh, I love that. And tell us about the book, when it came out, where it's available.
It came out in August of 24.
Yeah.
And then it came out in paperback this last August.
Great.
And really, you can get it anywhere you buy books. If your local bookseller doesn't carry it, they'll order it for you. It's certainly available at Amazon and bookshop.org and all the usual places. It's a regular trade book, so it's widely available.
Great. And do you have a website, Pamela?
I do. It is www.pameladtoler.com.
Great.
And
Great.
Also will lead you to my blog and to my newsletter.
Yeah. And to all her other books and stuff too. So getting back though to our Sheela Sigrid, what was the latter part of her life? Like I can't imagine living this kind of life and then just being able to settle into a normal life after it. I mean, it just seems so disruptive, so crazy.
Her
What was her
career
life like?
ended shortly after the Nuremberg trials started.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
She was back in the States for a speaking tour. She was in Chicago, so she stopped to speak to Colonel McCormick. They were talking about mostly the war crimes trials, and McCormick's, who often spoke without thinking, said, I think we have some officers who should be put on trial too. And she just kind of stopped and then said, Colonel, I'm just sorry, I can't accept that. And, they changed the topic. They continued their conversation. But when they were done, she went downstairs to the general manager's office and resigned.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It was really effectively the end of her career. I mean, for the
And
next
how old was she at that time, about Pamela?
late 50s,
Okay.
mid 50s, but yeah, 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she probably could have gotten a job with another newspaper, but she was the only child of an elderly mother, starting to need some care. She had some
She was
health issues herself. She decided to try and stay in the United States, and she tried to work as a journalist, a specialist in Germany and Central Europe, but she just never quite made the transition to the post-war world. I mean,
Wow,
she was able to work on and off for about 10 years, but
Okay.
she was never entirely forgotten either.
No, absolutely not. And she never married, right? Never had children.
Married, no children.
No. I mean, she had too much going. She had too much cooking.
Yeah.
How could you maintain much else, really?
Right.
And
And women with that kinds of jobs in the 30s and 40s, by and large, did not marry.
Yeah, we
Which
we have found that with our
makes sense.
Sheilas quite often. Yeah, for sure. And she died where?
Westport, Connecticut, which is where she had purchased a house for her mother.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
And, it was a funky little 200-plus-year-old cottage in the middle of town. And
did people visit it, or is it
people
not?
did visit. And in
Okay.
fact, when she was older, she started in the 70s, she started having younger journalists and scholars and historians coming to talk to her about
Oh, that's nice.
her early days as a woman reporter, about the rise of the Nazis, about working with Colonel McCormick. So she ends up with this sort of second wave of interest as a source, even when
Right.
she's
Yeah.
wheelchair bound and fragile. And
Right.
well, often women just don't get recognized, or their contributions aren't remembered. So that's nice to know that in her last, her final stage,
Right.
that she was being remembered and recognized.
absolutely.
And she lived till she was 87. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Wow. So she had a very long life and was able to, have a little interest, and people knew who she was and would come to speak with her. And that's pretty amazing.
Because
she was
so
an only
often
child
people
too,
just,
you said,
she
right?
was an only child. Yeah.
Did she have other family, like cousins, and today is there existing family members?
There are not existing family members today, as far as I can tell. She certainly had cousins in Norway,
Okay.
but again, the ones who would have known her are long gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Wow. This is just.
It's been remarkable. Is there anything else you wanted to share specifically about her?
Well, I certainly hadn't heard of her. And I mean, I'd already read that Eric Larson book, but she hadn't stuck with me.
Right.
It was only stumbling across her that led me to her. And, she was just amazing.
Yeah.
She was just amazing.
She really was. Like we said earlier, so courageous that
Yeah.
she did what she did
Very courageous.
during that time. I mean, the Nazis knowing where her allegiance was, and I can't
Her
even imagine.
bravery and guts.
Yes.
Not to mention education and sophistication and, her savvy, like you were saying, that she,
Mhm.
in addition to having all of those attributes in her favor, her being fluent in so many languages and understanding the European culture, just that sensibility, which, is just.
Yeah, I mean, she was in the right place at the right time with an unusual set of skills, and she made the most of it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Pamela, as we think of Sigrid as You're Sheela. You are in many ways
Yes.
our Sheela.
Yes, you are Sheela in your own right,
In
for
your
sure.
Right. And so I'd love to end with you telling us a little bit about you and your work beyond this amazing
Yeah.
Sheela.
Sure. I'm a history nerd. I've been a history
We
nerd
love
my
history nerds.
whole life. And these days, I mostly try and tell the stories of underreported and overlooked women. I mean, the book before this, Women Warriors, was in fact a global history of women who fought from the second millennium BCE up through, certainly through World War II and a little bit after. So,
Wow.
I mean, women who actually bore arms, not metaphorical fighters.
Wow.
So I love going down a rabbit hole.
That's amazing. And did they have to pretend they were men in order to do that quite often?
Some of them did, though not as many as you would think.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I did not know that. That's very interesting.
I mean, lots of freedom fighters, lots of warrior
Yeah.
queens. But it's interesting, the largest group, the most important group of women warriors took me totally by surprise. And those were women who helped defend their towns in case of a siege.
Mm.
And those women outnumber all the other types of women warriors many times over. And you see them over and over and over again in the literature. A statesman in ancient China described them as the army of women and said that they need to be used as best you can in case of a siege.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. And we have Sybil Ludington right here in the US, who is
Yes.
just
Mhm.
amazing and so overlooked, even though she went 3 times the distance of Paul Revere's range, as far as we can tell. So, you hear about that quite often. It's very interesting. And I bringing to mind all this too, I'm thinking about the Oversteegen girls and Honey Shaft in the midst of all this, who were young girls fighting against the Nazis,
resistance,
the
yeah.
resistance. And I mean, there was
Absolutely.
a lot of women who were involved in the resistance, young women. These girls were
Yeah.
teenagers, and
Absolutely.
again, you think about that bravery that it would take to,
Incredible courage.
to be a part of that. I can't even imagine.
Well, I think I can answer your question for myself, Pamela. Do I have the courage of Sigrid Schultz? And the answer is no. I know I probably would not have that bravado. And
yet, in a time when talking about women's history is under attack, you are talking about women's history.
We sure are.
we sure are, and we won't stop.
No, we won't stop. We cannot be silenced, and it is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every time we have an episode, we are constantly amazed by the under-recognized achievements of such brave, bright, bold women just stepping out and really sticking their neck out on the limb. And
It really makes us a little angry sometimes. Like I see us both as like these very positive, kind of upbeat gals, but I feel like since we've started the podcast, we've both gotten a little bit angry.
a little jaded.
Jaded. It's true, because there's so, like I said, we're never going to run out of content. And that in itself is very sad.
Well, speaking of that, what's next for you?
Yes.
I'm working on a proposal now for a book that I'm not going to tell you about because it hasn't been accepted yet. The proposal isn't even
Are we going to
finished.
be one of the first to know that, Pamela?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
I come back on our podcast.
Yeah, come back on the
Yeah, it'll
podcast.
be several years from now, but I am sure you will still be here doing it.
Okay,
And,
yes, we will.
And another underreported, pretty amazing woman. So
Bring it. Bring it.
Fantastic.
Anytime you want to join us, like we always, we love these conversations
Mhm.
with writers, sometimes filmmakers, but we would love to have you as a guest because we would love to have you share some of those stories with us. We can't possibly cover all those stories. So we're so delighted to have women
And
like Pamela,
with the
Sheila's like
depth
Pamela.
that
Yeah.
Pamela had.
Yes.
so I would love to be back.
Pamela does have some other books in me.
I do have some other books. I've got other stories I can tell you.
Yes. And might I say you're a lovely, wonderful storyteller.
You are. You're such a great storyteller. Really, really loved hearing about this. And I could talk to you all day. And I would love to do another episode on one of your
Yes.
other Sheilas. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This has been a blast.
It has
Thank
been.
you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Please send us your questions. We would love to hear your questions. I know Pamela would love to hear your questions. Keep that conversation going.
Yeah.
And let's, fight the fight and give these ladies some light. Let's do it. That's what we do here on SheelaNaGig. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Unabashed in your clothes.